everyone, and welcome to the Ken Show Way, a place where we discover the grandest expression of our human potential. And I'm really excited today because I have a friend, a mentor, a person that I have trained in various places in this country with stress reduction techniques. I've got my friend John Mason here, and John is the founder and owner of the Stress Education Center, and he's been running that show since 1978. I think the man might have a bit to say about the topic of stress. He's also an author of a best-selling book called The Guide to Stress Reduction, now in its second edition, and I highly recommend it. Should be one that's on your shelf, not because we just get information about stress, but because John has filled that book with exercises that can allow you to then experiment in lowering that stress response. And of course, that's what we're all about here, is finding ways to build resilience. And I invited Dr. Mason onto the show today because we're going to talk about something that is really interesting, the topic of joy and happiness. So John, welcome to the show.
Great to be here with Roger. Love always working with you, man. And I'm looking forward to having this presentation and to be of service to the people that view it. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that, John, because I know your heart and I know that's very sincere. And folks, what we're doing here today is kind of a little bit of a free-flowing discussion on this topic, because there's a lot of confusion. You know, John, one of the things that I notice is people tend to kind of interchange this idea of joy and happiness. And I can for sure understand why we would tend to do that. But really, there are some pretty significant differences between the two ideas of experiencing joy and experiencing happiness. Can you kind of break down your take on what divides these two into separate categories?
You know, let me give just a little bit of background, because we've been having this conversation for a couple of months. You know, why would we do this and what value will it have? And I hadn't really done the research and spent a lot of time thinking about the difference between joy and happiness until one of my clients asked me to do a training to a management group. And I was asked to talk about and bring in the concepts and exercises so that people could find joy in the workplace. And I went about it by doing a little bit of reading and a little bit of research, and I had my own opinion about it. Joy and happiness are delightful. People love to be happy. They love that feeling of a deep sense of joy. What triggers happiness and joy is going to be different, and it's going to be unique for everyone. The one thing that I came up with in this consulting job that I did and with the research that I've done is that happiness, as opposed to joy, seems to be triggered by something that may be external, something that you see or hear, something that you experience out in the world, and you react by smiling, by finding some happiness in it. There are things in the world that will trigger happiness. There were things that will trigger the opposite, unhappiness. So I think we'll get to talk about that. Joy, on the other hand, based on the research, my own thinking, the meditation that I've done about it, seems to come from within. It doesn't seem to be as much a reaction to something that transpires in your environment. It kind of bubbles up from a deeper emotional place. It may be coming from a passion that you have. It may be coming from what you identify consciously or unconsciously as your purpose in life, the need that you have to perform as a human being and be of service out in our world. I add the service part because that's where I'm coming from. So joy tends to be, again, unique to each individual, but it tends to come from a deeper set of feelings. And I would love to give you some examples if it's appropriate.
Yeah,
Okay.
please. I have my own idea about this, but I'd love to hear some of your examples.
Okay, so the difference is, And I put this in this blog that I wrote in the end of November, early December, which is now about 2 months past. And some of you might relate to being a fisherman, a fisher person, somebody who enjoys going out and catching fish. The act of fishing and catching, hooking a fish and catching a fish, that makes you happy. The idea of planning to go to a beautiful environment, to get out into the woods, to sit by the river or by, if maybe you're on a boat and fishing from a lake or in the ocean, that is the passion that you have. That is the joy that you will experience. If you can't relate to that, perhaps you're a craftsperson or an artist. Maybe you work with wood, or you have a creative nature that takes you into certain manipulating materials. So if you go to a tool store, or you go to the hobby shop, or you go and find your new supplies and your material, you walk into that store and you feel happy. Maybe you even buy something. When you sit down to do your art form, to create, to figure it out, to produce something, that is where the joy is. It might even get you up in the middle of the night because it's a project that you love so much. If you were a musician walking into a music store and seeing the instruments and seeing what is possible makes you happy. But when you sit down to produce something, to create a concert or a performance, when you feel the music flowing through you, that is your joy. And for those of us who are in service, whether you're a first responder or, as this group, it's a management team that was in healthcare, providing healthcare for people, there's a reason why you go into that. You have a passion to serve. You have a passion to be there. When somebody says, thank you, you changed my life, you've done something, that makes you happy. But the reason that brought you into work, the rush into an emergency situation, for example, or to rush into a struggle that a client is having that might even be life or death, when you can use your experience and your wisdom, when you feel that you've really done everything possible, that is where your joy is. It goes beyond, I think, what people will define as happiness.
I really like that definition. And there's a couple things that come up there for me that I think are worthy of maybe a little deeper dive. One of them is, you mentioned how happiness tends to be an external process, very often associated to materialism of some kind. And, one of the things that I think most of us can relate to is we chase the brass ring. The brass ring might be, I got that promotion at work to the new upper management position. It might be, well, I really have my eye on that sexy car over there, or I'm going to get the big house. And for a minute, you experience some happiness from obtaining that. And people validated, hey, beautiful car, congratulations on your promotion. My goodness, your house is beautiful. I wish I could live someplace like that. And for a moment, we have a little bit of a stoking of our ego, a little validation that obtaining that brass ring meant something to other people. Or we also compare ourselves, right, to others who have achieved something that inspires us to get it too. And so we get that. And then after the magic is worn off, sometimes it could be hours, maybe a couple of days, sometimes a few months, the thing that we obtain becomes normalized. And it's no longer bringing us the same rush, the same happiness that it did before. And in some cases, maybe that thing has become a burden. Well, my beautiful car, someone just scratched it, or I got in a little fender bender, or, oh my gosh, something just broke at my house and something else just broke at my house. And now it's become a burden. And now you're pretty unhappy, right? And so we're chasing this materialism all the time. And it's kind of like It's a little bit of an extreme example, but I think it fits somewhat, which is a dope addict, right? A drug addict trying to get the next high, and we keep chasing it, but it never lasts as a fulfilling strategy. What do you think about that as an idea?
You know, as I was preparing for this, I again went back into the research, and I've heard people say that, that once something makes you happy, then it takes more of it to make you happy the next time. I don't know that I agree with that,
Mm,
but I will say this, and I think it's real important to add to what you're chatting about. If you find something that makes you happy and you're responding to an experience or a material possession or whatever, there is the backside. There is something that can trigger unhappiness. And it might be that you don't have something or something breaks, like you say, and then it becomes a burden. When you follow your bliss, when you find your passion, when you know that you're doing an activity and it gives you joy, there is no unjoy. There's no opposite of happiness, unhappiness. There's joy or the lack of it because you're not doing what you want or need or are compelled to do. And I think that's a huge distinction. And you're right to put it into material sense. And a lot of people chase happiness and they want a relationship or possession or trip or something, and they're unhappy if they can't get it. I think it's superficial. It's out there, and it's not deep within them. So
yeah.
you might consider it that way as well. And let's keep chat.
That's a great way to kind of funnel that down into some specifics. I love that. Totally agree. And there is also this sentiment I hear from a lot of people that, well, I'll be happy when. And once again, it's linked to something external in the environment. I'll be happy when I get that job, when I get that house. And so often we're comparing ourselves to others. Maybe we see a popular person, a superstar, an influencer who's got all the toys and stuff. And we think, well, I'll be happy when, or once I get past this, I'll be happy. And again, we're trying to hang our hat on something that really doesn't have an ability to be measured, right? So it's like, well, I got that, but gee, it didn't really create that happiness. And it's that internal piece that I think you're really spot on about. John, with COVID happening, yes, I said the C word, with the pandemic and all the changes that have been happening, I've been working with quite a few people, and many of them, as you know, are in the first responder community. That's a lot of the folks that I have a relation with because of my background. Many of them are approaching depression and despondency, even. And when I look at it, one of the things I'm noticing is they've lost purpose and meaning. Now, you've mentioned this several times when we're really on point with our purpose and we're in the creative aspects of that synergy that happens when we're really impassioned about something. When we lose that, you know, it doesn't, you could win the lottery and not find happiness, right? Because that you've lost something internal to yourself. Have you been noticing this more lately? And what would you advise someone who has kind of lost that passion for life?
We we've been in 2 years of a pandemic as we're recording this video. And it's been in a really unusual, unique time in our history. But life isn't just this 2 years. Every time, every piece of your life, every transition you go through, you can get distracted by what's going on, what's swirling around you, what the expectations are, the feedback that you get, and trying to think about that with hanging somebody else's values on your life. So, I mean, it's been pretty intense for the last couple of years. Happiness and joy are not as close to the surface for many people because we've been in survival. And I think that we are distracted and we're following the distractions. We're caught up in the media. We're caught up in the social expectations of what's going on. If you're a first responder, if you're in healthcare, if you in mental health, if you're in some sort of human service, I think we really need to re-engage with why were we drawn there? We wanted to put our time and energy into something important, into something that could change people's lives, into something that may help people move in a better direction. And if we can stay focused on that, rather than just be bombarded by all the craziness in our lives, we have a better chance of not succumbing to the depression and the anxiety that these mass cultural changes that we're going through and have been imposed upon us are taking. I think we need to look at the bigger picture. And again, we need to identify our passion or our bliss. I also say, and I did some research today about how to get your mindset involved with that and finding gratitude. And I watched your YouTube video, and I know you have podcasts on gratitude. Roger, you do an exceptionally great job at having people focus on what's working and what's good and what they can be thankful for. And I know we're going to get to this, but even in the darkest moment, even in the most challenging test or experience that you're going through, your heart, your soul can find a lesson, and it can find something to celebrate. If nothing else, what not to do, or where you don't want to be, but it's a wisdom that you can place within you, and you can find joy in learning that, and then find a way of conveying it, of sharing it, of using that lesson to be of service at an even greater level. And I think that as we all go through these dark times, what are the lessons? What have we found that's worked for us? What do we want to avoid? Let's find a way of knowing that, learning that, finding the joy and the appreciation and gratitude of having the experience, even if it's of what not to do. And then let's be of service, share it.
You make a really important point there, John, which is, there's so many people out there that just want to paint magical thinking onto everything, right? Rainbows, unicorns, butterflies, but that's lipstick on a pig most of the time, because sometimes life is hard. And I'm going to read directly from your blog, because I was looking at this and I thought, wow, that's summed up really well. And it's exactly to the point you just made. I'm going to read this to everybody. This is coming from Dr. Mason's blog, which you can find at his website, the Stress Education Center. When you wake up in the morning, start by offering gratitude for what you do have, and then look for the joy which comes from every experience, every interaction you have. Then, when possible, share your wisdom, even if this is a reflection of some difficult challenge. Yes, even the dark places can create the joy of learning from the challenge and the celebration of newfound wisdoms which serve you and the people you interact with. Now, that is a really great way to navigate the adversity of life. It's also not magical thinking, because what you're doing is you're in a place of acceptance. But here's the key that I really hear in there. And friends, this, if I personally can offer you any one piece of advice here, this is kind of what it boils down to. We shift our perspective and our focus away from the things we cannot control, and we bring them into the things that we can control, even if the thing is learning, growing, gaining strength and wisdom from the adversity we face.
I, I'll use a personal example. I think people can relate to this, and I'm not looking for sympathy. My wife passed away 10 years ago next month in January. And I still have grief. I still have sadness. My wife and I were together about 30 years. Several years ago, I got to meet with another gentleman whose wife passed away, and he became a widower. I was co-counseling with him and sharing with him the process that I went through and the value and even the beauty of the lessons that I've learned from letting go and from experiencing life post loss of my wife. It gave me that sense of purpose and joy. It gave my heart a lifting, knowing that the experience and the wisdom that could be shared with this person who was new to their grief and their loss was going to be something that would be of value for them to hear and experience, even if they did it in their own unique way and their situation was different than mine. And it was. And many times since those initial meetings, that person has come back to me and experienced a thankfulness and a gratitude for the time and the conversation that we had to not only help him get through that, but for him also to find some of the joy and the wisdom and the learning from that really difficult situation that he in turn, in his own unique way, I'm not going to say was going through, he's still going through it. We always do with a loss like that. Those are dark times. We've all lost people. We've all lost important things, parts of ourselves, relationships, jobs, careers, whatever. Things have changed. What can we take away? What can we then do from that experience to be of service to someone else who might be going through something similar to that?
That's beautiful. It's this kind of support that allows us to move forward with a bit more ease and grace through the tough times. And your heart just opens when you're able to share from that authentic place, empathy, compassion for the other person, and then maybe we toss a few noodles of spaghetti on the wall for them to consider. And sometimes something sticks that just takes that edge off, and again, I want to make sure people understand we're not talking about painting rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies and pots of gold here. We're talking about real life and the ability to take a little bit more of a step in the right direction instead of maybe in another direction with maladaptive coping strategies and things that harm us even more. We have an opportunity to be empowered. It's interesting because when I look at some interesting cultures like special forces operators, Russian Spetsnaz soldiers, Navy SEALs, people like this, who I've had the ability to train with multiple times, their culture offers us something very important. When they face adversity, the very first thing they say to themselves, in essence, is something around the idea of good. They just say good. They've programmed themselves. And what's interesting is even if it's bad, really bad, they still say good because now their perspective is to begin to scan the environment for the opportunity, the way out. That's where their focus goes. And they waste very little energy having a pity party. Now they've trained themselves to that. And there's always a caution here I want to throw out to people. This doesn't mean that when things settle down, you don't grieve. You do not need to push that away. That also is not going to serve. However, imagine how much more empowered we are instead of wallowing in misery or victimization. Yes, that was hard. Yes, I'm grieving. And now, how am I going to move forward here? Where's my opportunity? This is what I'm hearing in there, John. And it's a powerful thing, but you must train it. You have to practice this so that that muscle is well worked out. And I'm going to suggest you need to have outside resources that can support you, that can offer some guidance, some mentorship. And all of us, through the life events we've been through, have an opportunity to transmute those life events into service to others.
There are experiences and lessons we learn in life, difficult ones like what we're talking about, that make you unhappy. And yet, if you are willing to share your story, a couple of things happen. First off, you desensitize every time you tell your story. You let go a little bit more of the anxiety, the fear, the grief, or whatever it is. If you have healthy people around you that don't pile on with anxiety and fear, that are just willing to listen and to support you, that is the healthy external relationship that can get you through a difficult situation. But even better, sometimes that becomes the joy because you've touched them. You've allowed them to experience through you a difficult situation. They've been desensitized in advance because you've survived it. You've gotten through it. You've problem solved it. People don't ever consider when bad things happen to them. But sometimes if they've heard from another person at some point about a sickness or a loss or something, and what they did, they realized that they may have some option that they never would have considered themselves. You are being a mentor, a coach, really important aspect to offer your perspective, even from that difficult situation. And if you can't find joy in being of service like that, then you're not really looking at what your human existence in life is all about. We're here to connect with people. We're here to be of service. We're here to share. We're here to have the experience and to test the wisdoms that we are learning in this life.
That is
At least
beautiful.
I'm sensing that that's my purpose, and I don't think I'm unique in that.
I love that perspective, John. And that was very impassioned. I don't know if everybody caught that, but did you see John just drop right into his truth? That's passion and that's joy because he's sharing an absolute that he's discovered through all the years of his life and the wisdom he's created. That's what we're talking about right there. Now, John, as we kind of bring this into the final moments, I want to leave everybody with some ideas about how they can cultivate this, right? Because we've had a great discussion, but what are some of the things people can do? Now, I'm going to share one with you that I've been hanging my hat on for a while, and then let's talk about some of the strategies people can do to enhance and work out this muscle so that we have a little bit of resilience in that gas tank for when the challenges come. One of the things that I did a number of years ago, I participated in a coaching program and read a book by Jack Canfield. If you're not familiar with Jack Canfield, he and Mark Victor Hansen wrote the incredibly popular Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And then Jack Canfield went out on his own and wrote a book called The Success Principles. Highly recommended. It's quite impressive. One of the exercises that I've taught to now literally tens of thousands of people is the ability to create a mission statement, a bottom line of your heart of service, right? How you want to show up in the world. And so over the years, this is kind of a living document for me. I keep adjusting and tweaking it as things in my life change and my service to community changes. And I've come up with this mission statement and I review it every single day. I look at it first thing in the morning to hang my hat on. This is how I plan to move through my day, living this mission. And then the other side of it is at the end of the day, I'll read it again and ask myself, could I have done better? How did I do today? And I measure myself in terms of did I live up to my mission? And so my mission that I've come up with, which I'll share with everyone, is pretty simple. My mission is to teach, coach, and empower others to the grandest expression of their human potential. That's what I do as a resilience coach. And so every day I start my day reminding myself, this is what I'm here to do. End of the day, I review. So that's one way to kind of help navigate keeping ourselves on track with the passion, the purpose that I'm here for. And friends, you can do a mission statement for anything. You could do one in relationship with your partner, for example, or make one with your children at various stages as they grow. And what is their mission? And then as a family, you can have a mission statement. There's no end to the possibility here. So that's one way that I've found to help me kind of keep myself on track for the hard days when I'm feeling a little less passionate about life and what I need to do that day. What are some other things people could do?
I want to support what you just said. Finding your mission and then acknowledging it on a regular basis, perhaps daily, checking in, being accountable that you're moving forward. All of those really can help keep you on target. And what's at the core of your mission? And that's what I want to address. To find your passion, to find what you like, you might want to start. There's a couple of things, but we might want to start with what you're grateful for. What have you got to be joyful about? What are you thankful for? And then find a way of doing that more, or bringing that into your life, or sharing it in a way so that you can again be of service and touch other people's heart. And I want to thank you for letting me be in this presentation, because I am genuinely really happy to be sitting here with you and being able to share my passion and be of service at some level. But what we don't give it enough internal thought at a deep level. What do we want? Why are we here? What is our purpose in life? And it's not always about making $1 million. It's not about having a big house. It's not even about having children or sending them to college. Those are great. Those are great goals. Don't get me wrong. And being in relationship with your family is one of those things that can give you great joy. Being told what to do and how to expect that everybody's going to be formed, that takes away from it. But where's your passion? What is the gratitude that you have? And if you can say, I wake up each day, I get to take a step out of the bed, I get to look around, I get to jump into some experience in life. It may not be always fun, it may be hard or challenging, but I get to do stuff. And every day I'm going to see something new and change my perspective on life and add to that body of knowledge and wisdom that I have deep within me. I'll just reiterate this. I also say, once you have that new wisdom, that new perspective, how can I share it? How can I create a Christmas gift that keeps on giving day after day, not just one day a year, but how can I keep giving that gift wrap package of myself, my heart, my genuine being, my emotion, my feeling, my connection? How can I give that and create the world as a better, I don't know, it may be too broad to say create the world as a better place, but how can I be part of a solution rather than the problem? And I don't say that I wake up every morning with that in mind, but I do. Since I was very young, I consciously identified that I wanted to find a way of serving, and that's what gives me my joy.
Yeah, there it is. And that's part of it, friends, is to discover what is it that really fills you inside, not externally, but inside with that joy. And when you discover that, well, here's a hint, do more of it. It's not that complicated. One of the other things that I have really learned from you, my friend, is this idea of accountability, friendship, mentorship. And that is having a circle of people that you can reach out to when you're having a hard time, right? Because a lot of times when we're in the position of influencing people, well, we're doing a lot of service, but then are we taking care of ourselves too on our hard days? And I've noticed that my tendency is to go into the Roger cave and just punch through it and power through it and I'll get there, but I create a lot of suffering. And you introduced me to this idea of a mastermind group many, many years ago. And since that time, you and I connect just about every week to talk about life, philosophy, hold each other accountable for certain things. This having a strong community so that we're not necessarily this lone wolf, which can be romanticized to our detriment significantly. Having community is also, in my opinion, one of the cornerstones to continuing to keep that balance of body, mind, spirit, and that internal joy stoked, especially when we have a hard day.
Yeah, and let's be careful with the community that we pick. Community is really important. Happy or healthy or positive people may be a little bit more on the plus side. People that accept you and don't degrade you. People that have good habits and are healthy rather than being models of what not to do. That that is helpful. And for those of you who can't find that in your family and friends, there are coaches, there are therapists, there are clergy, there are organizations that can listen to you and accept you and support you for being the perfect person that you are, even with your imperfections. There's something perfect about the rough edges that we all have. And whether that's to create our own lessons or lessons for the people we interact with, our imperfections are tremendous tools for learning and growing if if we're open to doing that.
If we're open to doing that, precisely. And, in my culture, it was pull yourself up by your bootstraps, walk off into the sunset with a smoking gun and all by yourself. It's like, no, that's not going to work. It works for a minute, and then when your resilience is low, you find yourself in a whole heap of trouble because you don't have anyone to outreach. And you mentioned something very important to me, John, which is, who are you surrounding yourself with? Friends, if you're constantly around people that are degrading you, bringing you down, this is the time to make a shift and to find an empowered community. Now, I'm not telling you to let go of those relationships necessarily, although that may be the right decision. But what I am saying to you is, find a community of people that are thinking along these lines, that are there to support each other, help each other grow, offer true, candid feedback, even if that's sometimes hard to hear, because that can be the greatest growth that we experience. John, this is bringing us to the end here, and I want to give you the final word. What is it that you would love to say to the audience that's tuned in here? And these are all seekers. I mean, these are people who are interested in building up the resilience they have so that they can navigate the adversities of life. That's why they've tuned into this show. What final message would you provide them today?
Thank you for letting me participate in this. And I think happiness is great. I think everybody should laugh every day. I think we should look for what's good in life and we should be grateful for things. I would like to think, though, that if you're going to be a seeker, you're going to delve more deeply. We each have our own unique way of going about living. We each have our own unique spin on what our purpose is. In general terms, though, I think our purpose may be more simple than we allow it. It's to connect with people, it's to support people. If you'd let me use this horrible metaphor, to take the hands of the other pilgrims that you find walking through the pathway of life that you find yourself on, if you can find a way to just be gentle and of service, not necessarily dragging people where they don't want to go or overcommitting yourself, but just finding a way to find your passion, your creativity, and then allowing yourself to live it. And when you have knowledge, wisdom, perspective, to share it. I, I, I would really say, do that kind of work, find out what you enjoy and where you can be of service, and then take every opportunity to connect with people and to share it. Thanks for having me.
Oh, that was beautiful, Dr. Mason. You're my buddy, John. I'm so happy to have you here because that's the kind of wisdom that when we share it with the world, we help people take a step and then they share it. And, you know, I want to leave you all with a thought about the Kensho way. The Kensho Way is about discovering the grandest expression of our human potential, our inner truth. And that's what we're talking about here. And once it's discovered, cultivating it, enhancing it, and sharing it with others. And so, my wish to all of you as we sign off today is that your journey helps you take a step on that path toward discovering the grandest vision of whom and what you can become. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we will see you at the next podcast.
Be well.